How does being an airline pilot, a hospitality creator, and a regenerative farm owner all connect to growing older with gusto? We'll find out today with our guest. I am Gail Zugerman, host of the podcast Growing Older with Gusto, which is dedicated to showcasing the benefits of growing older in a positive and productive way. Today's guest is Joao Rodrigues, and he is what I consider a Renaissance man. He's a pilot at TAP Airlines, a national Portugal airline. He is the founder of Silent Living Hospitality Projects in Portugal and elsewhere. He's also the founder of a regenerative farm called Herdade No Tempo, where he is building a home community. And aside from all this, he's a strong family man with 5 children and a wife, and is passionate about life. We have so many things to talk with him about, so let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thank you very much, Gail. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Thank you. Thank you. You're involved in so many projects. I wanted to begin by having you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and what's been driving you the past few years.
So certainly. So basically, I'm Joao. I'm 50 years old, and I see myself essentially as a father of 5 kids and as a husband. So I'm very personally orientated, and especially for me, my family is top of everything. So everything that I do has a purpose, which is obviously looking and giving good examples to my family and to my kids, and especially to future generations as well. So I started off doing a degree in management and economics when I finished school. After that, I really wanted to become a pilot because I was passionate about flying. My father was a captain in TAP for several years, almost during 36 years. Wow. And so I thought there was this connection with aircrafts, with the machines, with flying, with the world, having lots of knowing lots of different cultures and different countries around the world. And basically I then did my training up in Prestwick in Scotland, where I've been, took me a year and a half roughly to get my airline pilot license. Then I joined TAP. So now I'm in TAP already for something like 27 years. So wow. It's been more than 20 years that I'm already a captain. First of all, I was a captain on short haul and basically in the European flights. And since the last, I think, 7-8 years, I've been flying long haul, which means that basically most of the routes of TAP, we fly to Brazil, probably to something like 10 different destinations in Brazil. We fly to Africa, to Angola, Mozambique, and Mexico as well, in Cancun. And we fly to the States, to 5 different destinations, so direct flights to the States, where we'll be able to meet when I come to Chicago.
Right, that would be great to see you again. What is your favorite place to fly to?
Well, to be honest, what I really like is to have a different roster, which means that you don't always fly to the same places, which actually ends up being quite good. So generally, I have 2 flights to Brazil, 1 to Africa, and 1 to the States every month. That's roughly my roster, wow. Which is great because I get to catch up with lots of friends that I have all over, and also get to understand different cultures, different foods, different musics. All of that for me, it's really nice and important. And we also have something which is basically in the Northern Hemisphere when it's winter time. It's summertime in the Southern Hemisphere, which is very nice because you end up always catching a little bit of sun, which is
the vitamin D. Good, getting your vitamin D.
Yes, and so basically after joining TAP, which is, if you ask me, oh, João, in which of these, which one do you really perceive yourself as? Do you perceive yourself as a pilot? Do you perceive yourself as a founder of Silent Living or a regenerative agriculture?
Well, I was going to ask you, how did you end up pivoting, first of all, into like hotel, the hospitality industry? How did that come about?
Well,
what drew you to that? I'm really curious.
It was mainly, well, the reason was exactly, it was by accident, okay?
Oh, okay.
So which means that when I sold the company that I had, which was doing people-centered innovation, a lot based on anthropology, sociology, and I sold my 50% of that company. And I thought, because I'd been working very hard during the last few years, I thought I had something to give back to my family. So I decided to build this weekend house in Comporta, in this really beautiful, nice area with pristine beaches and really beautiful waters as well. It's just 1 hour south of Lisbon. And so based on that, I built the house. And 1 or 2 years after the house was finished, because I put a lot of everything that I do, I put a lot of effort into it, and
I
I
know.
really like it's all about the details and making everything work really well and smoothly. And so basically, the house was then chosen to represent Portugal at the Venice Biennale of Architecture, and it made something like 10 covers of magazines around the world, like El Decor Italy on the cover, like AD Spain on the cover, like Maison Côté Sud on the cover. Suddenly it was all over,
Wow.
wallpaper as well. So I decided, oh, let's we were not using the house that much, so let's start renting the house, because we were already borrowing the house to lots of friends and family, and that's how silent living started. Um,
Tell us a little bit about silent living. I mean, silent living is okay. I don't want to talk. You talk. Tell us about that. The whole
so,
concept and
so basically, silent living is a small hospitality group in which we have several houses located in different areas of Portugal, and it's the idea that each of these house should represent a local way of living in that area. So, for example, Casas na Areia, the first project we did, is a house that should represent how people live on the beach and close to the coast. So it's a beach house. We then have Cabanas no Rio that represent, these are small cabins that basically represent how people live close to the river and close to a estuary of the big river. And then we have the farm, the house in the farm, which is Casa no Tempo, that should also try to represent how people live in a big farm in the Alentejo region. And then we have Santa Clara that I think you were able to visit here in Lisbon, which is basically also a small hotel with six suites, and in which it was an old palace. And so we tried to show how people used to live many, many years ago, maybe 100 or 200 years ago, inside one of these palaces.
and I can
And
tell my listeners since I have been fortunate enough to have been there, it is absolutely exquisite and the gardens are amazing. Okay.
And then we have the last house that we also joined to the collection, is Casa na Terra, which is a house on a lake, and basically it should also, and in each of these houses, so we build with local materials. We only have local people working there. We only use local products at breakfast and the other meals as well. So there is always this idea of really connecting all of these projects to the locality, to the place itself, with hopefully this idea of grounding people and giving them a moment for themselves as well. Silent living.
How did you come up with that name? I'm curious.
Oh, so that's quite an interesting question, because one day, as we started with each of the projects, each of them had their own name, but we suddenly we decided we needed to have an umbrella name that could basically look after all the projects, and that could give a sense of unity to all of this. And to do this, what we did was, well, better than ourselves giving us a name, is why don't we ask our dear guests that stay with us, and why don't we ask them for their contribute to find out what could be our name. So during 8 months, in all the houses, the teams were trained to basically, they wouldn't ask anything to the guests, but they would just collect the words that guests would say when they first enter the spaces. So people would say, "Oh, it's about the simplicity of the architecture. It's about the nature. It's about a lot of people the sense of home, the sense of family, and a lot of people would talk about the silence. Oh, it's about the silence of the architecture, the silence in the space, the way we look after our guests, all of that. And so, as silence was one of the words which was more frequently said, we thought that silent living could fit very well as the brand for our hospitality group.
That's a wonderful way to come up with a name and a branding, so to speak. That's a fascinating story. That's great. So, how is being in this sort of hospitality or hotel business, how has that added to your life in this whole process of growing older?
Well, as I mentioned you before, I'm very person oriented. So looking after others, I think it's one of the best things that we can do in the world. And by doing this and in silent living, what we mainly do is looking after other people when they stay with us. We generally do it in a very simple and easy way, in which we look after our guests as longtime friends. So we do everything to make their experience as special as possible. And by saying this, one of the really important things for us is also that we get to inspire our guests during their stay. And when I say inspire, it could be either through the architecture, through the generosity of our service, it could be through the beauty of the houses itself, of the interiors. So all of these things should touch people during their stay and hopefully promote some changes in their future lives. It's the idea of leaving a little seed.
It's not,
And this, I think, answers your question.
yeah, thank you very well. And also, where do these people come from, most of them, and how do they learn about silent living?
It's also a very good question. I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly, but my idea is that most of these people know the houses and the silent living through lots of articles that have been published in the press, and as well through our online website and our Instagram accounts as well. And a lot of people say here mentioned that they came recommended by a friend. So the word of mouth is definitely, I would probably put it on the top of the list.
Let's talk now about your involvement with your farm, how it all started, how it came about, what you're doing, what it's all about. It's so incredibly interesting.
So basically, the idea of the farm is an extension of silent living. So the project of the farm is actually inside the hospitality group of silent living, although it's one of these, as I say, silent living is a tree, and the farm is a huge trench of it. So it's quite an important part. Why? Because it was also the idea of during COVID, I flew very little. And so I had the time and the space of mind to focus and to try and understand in 1,000 acres, how could one inspire other people to basically look after the planet.
Did anyone in your family ever, were they into farming and they kind of introduced you to it? I mean, it was quite to me a big leap, sort of, from the piloting and then the hospitality, because I would think you would be so busy. Although in COVID, I understand things shut down. But so was there any?
If I try and investigate a little bit back in my family, if someone did it seriously, was
Oh,
probably my great grandparents,
okay.
because both of my grandparents and my parents, they obviously they love it, they like it, but they were never really into it. And the farm was rented out during a period of probably something like 15 years, something like that. But going back to this idea that I was just telling you just a minute ago, it's all about how can man, the animals and nature live in a perfect symbiosis, and at the same time not only produce very nutritious food and very healthy food, but also at the same time look after the planet. And when I say look after the planet, I'm speaking about retaining carbon in the soil. I speak about increasing the capacity of the soil to retain water. I'm talking about lowering the temperatures. So all of these are extremely important nowadays. And we do this based on something called holistic management. So there is a gentleman in the US called Alan Savory, who's basically our mentor, and he's been studying desertification in the big savannas in Africa, and he has found basically a way which is copying what the animals, the wild animals, do in the big savannas in Africa, because they're afraid of the predators. They keep all together and they keep moving as a herd. And it's this movement as a herd that basically has proved itself to be the best way to regenerate the soil, to build a very, very extreme resilient soil in which basically it's the birth for very nutritious food, very nutritious trees, and all of that. We also have an agroforest in our farm of more or less 2.5 acres, where we grow all our vegetables, where we grow lots of fruits, and where we work a lot with the idea of the symbiosis between the plants. So we plant some of the trees very close to each other because they end up helping and protecting each other. So either from bugs or from too much sun or shortage of water or something like that. So obviously it's zero chemicals. It's much more than organic or any of that. And basically it's this idea in the farm. It's whoever comes to visit us will be able to learn about how we do this process. We want to share it with the world. We want to be a demonstrative hub of how to do all of this, not only the holistic management, but also the growing very nutritious food in our agroforest, so that basically other people can go to their countries inspired by this idea and copy a lot of this and do it. And we all together, hopefully, will be able to save the planet. That's the idea.
I have a question. What kind of water do you use for both your animals and your land? And how do you get it implemented into the farm?
So basically, we have several lakes in the farm, and it's through these lakes that we basically retain the water during the winter time, so that we can then use it during the summertime. The cows are not allowed to go close to these lakes, so that we protect the integrity of the water. And we also have something like 4 boreholes from where we take the water, and we have it in 22,000 liter deposits, containers, where we then basically spread the water through all the farm for all the cattle, so that they have fresh water in all of these several places.
Now, you told me that you are also building a community on the farm, near the farm, or in that area. Can you talk a little bit, please?
Certainly. So the idea of the community is basically interesting people around this idea of saving the planet. There is this, it's a study of the United Nations saying, I don't know if you're aware, but it says that in the next 60 years, there won't be enough food for everyone in the planet. So there will be a huge shortage of food. And at the same time, we also have lots of the news coming out, telling a little bit about the problem that we are encountering with climate change. And so it's the idea of creating a community around these problems to solve this. So the idea is that we are working on it. There are lots of people that have been visiting silent living houses during the last 10, 15 years, and who have asked me, João, we would love to have a house here in Portugal. Can you help us look for a plot. Can you help us build a house? You have such a good taste. You could help me, but it's so hard to do that. And so I decided that inside the farm, we had, because we have lots of land, so inside the farm we could build another 10 or 15 houses spread around in the farm, in which we basically integrate the houses with the nature, because the houses are designed around rocks and around trees and around lakes and all of that.
What are they made out of, the homes themselves?
So the homes are made out of something called a poor concrete, which is a concrete which is mixed with soil from the farm, okay? A kind of a terracotta. So it has the resistance of concrete, but then it has the beauty of the soil in the walls as well. And it's extremely efficient regarding temperature-wise, so both in the winter and in the summer. And it's this idea that so we are going to sell these houses to these future owners, which are basically our partners in the farm as well, and we will run the whole houses as a hospitality project. So whenever the owners are not there, we what we do is we cater the houses, we clean the houses, we maintain the houses, and we rent the houses so that people, the owners that have the houses, have now a revenue on their investment. So not only they are connecting themselves to this beautiful project of saving the planet, but at the same time they're investing in a beautiful property as well, in a really beautiful home, and they're getting a return on their investment, which is, I think, which is pretty fair.
What would you say to any individual who's not fortunate enough perhaps to have a home on your farm? What can an individual do to help with climate change?
Well, one of the very important things is try to find out where your food comes from. Try to buy from local producers, in which at least you know it's organic. That's the least you should accept.
Okay.
Because not only by doing this, you're looking after your health, but at the same time, you will be looking after the planet and after the future of all of us, which is very important. There is a book called Food by an American writer called Mark Heyman, in which he talks about the problems of the food in the US. And so I really recommend, if someone can get the book, it's easy to buy online or at the bookstore. It's called Food by Mark Heyman, and try to learn a little bit of how to eat more healthy. But it starts a lot by, if you are not able to grow your own vegetables, then buy your neighbor's vegetables. So as close as possible.
Tell our listeners a little bit about your hotel, your boutique hotel, and how the food from the farm comes over and what you do in your special dinners that you have, because they are special.
Okay, so basically we don't call Santa Clara a hotel. I rather call it a home.
Okay.
So it's a palace with almost 300 years old, that we recovered it something like 7-8 years ago, and we ended up doing this. It has basically on the ground floor, it has a beautiful lobby and an entrance. Then we have our office of the silent living, and then we have a long table where we accommodate 14 people, and where the restaurant goes on, called Saya. Saya means supper. I will come back to that in a moment. Then on the second and on the first and second floor, we have 6 suites. And then on the last floor, we have our family home. And we have a little garden at the back as well to welcome our guests. So going back to the concept of Saya, what we wanted with Saya is basically showcase the work that we are doing at the farm. So Saya is a fine dining restaurant in which the meal starts around 7:30. People get to have a drink before dinner, and then once they get seated, the dinner takes about 2 or 3 hours easily. So it's 8 moments with beautiful, very, very nice food, very nutritious, very healthy food that we collect from the farm twice a week. that our team here transforms. And then each of these moments should showcase one of the issues that we are overcoming in the farm. It could be carbon, it could be the symbiosis, it could be photosynthesis, it could be soil. So it focuses in all of this, and then it tries to explain how we do it in the farm. So it's much more than just a beautiful meal with very nice ingredients, with a really nice atmosphere, where you get to know other people during the dinners as well, because it's a long table, it's a communal table shared. But at the same time, you also it's not really that you learn, but at least you get aware of lots of things that are happening to our planet, and how to solve some of them.
And it's a wonderful experience for anybody traveling to Lisbon. I
Thank
highly.
you, Gail.
So how do all your interests coincide to give you a kind of a greater sense of purpose, which you so artfully have created for yourself? How would you recommend to, or if you were giving advice to someone looking to expand their horizons a bit as they grow older, any advice?
Well, I think I feel it myself as well. As I go older, grow older, one of the things which is limited in our life is time.
Right.
So, and as time passes by, the more we use, the less we have to be able to use. And I think one of the very important things that we all ought to do is use this time very well, which means try and have when we're with someone, uh, forget about the phone, forget about any of the other things that are happening, and just focus on that person, concentrate on that moment, and really live the moment more than being worried with what happened yesterday or in the past, or worrying about things in the future. I think it's extremely important to live the moment. And I think it's all about that. It's the secret life. I believe it's the secret of living in the moment. And when you live in the moment, you really, because once that moment is past, you look back and you're okay with yourself, because you think, no, I've lived that moment the best I could. That's all
We can ask of ourselves.
that's right. That's right. And so it's a lot on trying to do when we do something. I always tell this to my children: when you do a task, do it extremely well. Focus on that task. Forget about everything else. Don't be worried what's going to happen tomorrow or the day after. Just live the moment, and that's hopefully. It's difficult, very difficult to do. It's very difficult to do, but I think it's beautiful, and I think it really adds a lot to our life. And as I grow older, if you ask me, that's what I will try to do, and hopefully, obviously, giving good examples, trying to do good things, beautiful things, and leave a good mark. And sometimes more than bringing something new to the planet is look at whatever we already have here and how can we improve it and make it better.
Thank you so much as we wrap up for being such a great guest and coming all the way from Lisbon today for our listeners. And if somebody wants to get in touch with you, whether for the farm or for staying at one of your other hospitality homes, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Okay, so I would the easiest way is to go online and probably look up silent living,
Okay.
and either through the website or through the Instagram, you will be able to come across. And if you send a message, both on Instagram or on one of our email accounts, saying this is for João, you will easily come across to João, and João will be on the other side, and I
Okay.
will be able to answer everyone. Okay.
Well, thank you very much. And for those of you listening, if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe by going to www.growingolderwithgusto.com to our podcast and share the podcast with your friends. Thank you so much for listening. And I always say, stay connected, stay busy, and stay listening. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Gail. It was a huge pleasure.
You too.
Thank you very
Good to
much.
see you. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Goodbye.